questions from folks about how this administration is moving at the speed it is right now. And let me say this, Elon Musk is now the one navigating this ship on every decision made in Washington. These cabinet members have no clue. They are all just puppets for Mr. Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency. And Republicans have just handed power over to him and his minions. In case you missed it, he has a team of about 200 youngsters who are in their early 20s who knows how to use AI and are masters at the computer. And they don't have a clue about how government works. They're using AI and they're able to identify thousands of funds to cut in rapid time. So they have empowered AI to make these decisions for you. So the fate and the fates of everyday Americans are in the hands of computers, AI, and minions, leading to disastrous results with little or no oversight. They think you won't notice, but we won't let them get away with it. Trump's executive orders are not just extreme, they're unconstitutional. The courts are already stepping in, but this administration is openly defying Congress, the law, and is even suggesting defying the courts, plunging us into a constitutional crisis. We cannot let that happen. And that's why we're here tonight. Answer your questions and make it clear. House Democrats are fighting back. We will protect Medicaid, Medicare, and SNAP. We will guard Social Security. We will defend public schools. We will fight for immigration rights. We will protect our privacy, billionaires. We will protect our privacy from billionaire overreach. We will lower costs, not raise costs. And we will defend the Constitution. Now, I will be honest, this fight will not be easy. That's probably one of the questions I get most. What are Democrats doing? It looks like Republicans are doing things left and right, all out of control, and Democrats aren't fighting back. They're not fighting back hard enough. Well, let's start here. Republicans control the House, we know, the Senate, the White House, meaning they can determine how many of Trump's orders will stand or be denied. All we really need are 3 House Republicans to stand with us. And we will make our voices heard through lawsuits and legislative action. Whether that's protesting, lawsuits, working with community leaders, or calling out Republicans' hypocrisy, we are fighting back. If we had those 3 Republicans to stand with us, the power would be in our hands. So unity is our strength. They're expecting us to give up, but we won't, because I'm ready to fight for you and alongside of you. So now I want to pass the microphone on to our fabulous moderator. And before I do, as a reminder to everyone, you don't have to wait until the question and answer part of the discussion to start asking questions. Just press *3 at any point so someone can take your questions down for the question and answer portion and press 6 to subscribe to our newsletter. And now, let me introduce my friend for many years, Don Lemon, who will moderate for us this evening. Don is an Emmy award-winning journalist and author who is beloved across America. He was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's a writer and producer and served as a journalist as part of NBC News, the Don Lemon Tonight on CNN, and now the Don Lemon Show. And in this moment of crisis, unity is our strength. He is so talented, so gifted, and is a policy wonk. He's my friend. And he's a member of the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project. And I'm proud to pass the baton off to you, Don Lemon. Take it away.
Oh my God. You are the anchor in this race. So I thank you for that. I appreciate it, Congresswoman. I really do appreciate it. Look, I'm going to say from the beginning, thank you for being here, but also good luck with those 3 Republicans. I think that's going to be tough, and we will have that discussion moving forward. If you get 3 Republicans, we'll see. But looks like everybody's over in MAGA land right now, and they're going along with this stuff. But I digress. That's part of the question and answer, the Q&A, the question and answer session that we will get to. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you, Congresswoman, for holding this event. It is very important at this moment. My name is Don Lemon. I'm the host of The Don Lemon Show, The Don Lemon Show on YouTube. So go there on YouTube, The Don Lemon Show, like and subscribe and become a member, because it keeps us out here in these independent streets where we can do our thing without corporate influence and give you the truth and bring on people like Congresswoman Wilson that will give us the truth as well. So I'm honored to be here tonight. I decided to come here tonight because of the crisis in our country. We really are. I believe that we are at a constitutional crisis in this country. And I believe if we're not already in, we are rapidly heading towards a dictatorship, autocracy, and we don't want to go there. Today, we saw one of the worst security breaches in our nation by the Secretary of Defense, a national security advisor, who shared highly sensitive information on an unsecured, encrypted messaging app. We have seen constant examples from this administration of trying to defy the courts, attack diversity, equity, and inclusion, attack our everyday freedoms, and attack our way of life, attack democracy in this country and the rule of law. We have Republicans, MAGA, going after Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the Department of Education, our immigrant communities, and so much more. We have a president who is attempting to change the fabric of this nation. He was just in the Oval Office saying, Pete Hegseth is doing a great job. Nobody did anything wrong. Nothing to see here. Let's move along. These are serious times that we're in right now. But you all being here with the help of folks like Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, we will protect our democracy. And we are here tonight to sound the alarm and to provide answers to you, the American people, during these trying times. And now it is my great privilege to introduce a host of people who are going to be here. And that is joining us first is Mark Elias. He's the founder of Democracy Docket and the chair of the Elias Group. His law firm is at the forefront of challenging many of the administration's unconstitutional actions. We also have the former Secretary of Education, Mr. Arne Duncan, who I knew from my time in Chicago, now the founder of Create Real Economic Destiny. He will be talking about the important work that the Department of Education provides to all students. Sui Chung is here, the Executive Director of Americans for Immigrant Justice, and is joining us to discuss some of the immigration policies this administration has been trying to implement, what immigrants' rights are in this moment in time, and how you can prepare yourself. And then we have the illustrious Mr. Mark Mariel from my home state of Louisiana, the president of the National Urban League, who will be talking about how these issues will affect Americans' pocketbooks. I was hoping to get to see him this weekend when I'm going to be, or this week, tomorrow, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be in New Orleans for the book festival. So if I don't see him, I'll see his lovely wife. And then we have Chiquita Brooks LaSure, the former administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, who can talk more about how Republican cuts and the administration's efforts will affect Medicare and Medicaid. And lastly, but not leastly, is that a word? We have Nancy Altman, president of the Social Security Works and the chair of the Strengthened Social Security Coalition, who will be joining us to discuss how Republicans' threats to cut Social Security will affect everyday Americans. Really important at this moment. Once we finish talking with our panelists, we will have a Q&A, as I mentioned before, and as the Congresswoman mentioned, so you can ask any of the panelists or the Congresswoman any pressing questions that you may have. And remember, you don't have to wait until the Q&A part of the discussion to just ask questions. Just press *3 at any point so someone can take your question down. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the microphone over to Mr. Mark Elias to set the scene for the constitutional crisis that we are in right now and how we and others are challenging many of the administration's efforts in real time. Mark, I'm so glad that you could join us. Thank you. I've been paying attention to the news and what has been happening with your law firm and others. We are in some serious times right now, so take it away. What's the fight here? What's the solution?
Yeah.
What do we do?
So first of all, Don, it's great to see you again. I used to come on your show on CNN, and you were always a champion to make sure that the American people understood the challenges facing democracy. And those challenges are greater now than they've ever been before. So what we have fundamentally is a president who wants to be a dictator. He is an authoritarian at heart. He models himself after the world's authoritarians, who he also aligns himself with. And he has a Republican Party that is entirely loyal to him, not to any idea, not to any principle, but to him. And the Republicans in Congress support him every step of the way. So what we have seen him do since he's taken office is try to enact or try to put in place a series of executive orders to weaken democracy. He has tried to take away from Congress its spending authority by making unilateral cuts to programs that he has no authority to cut. He has empowered Elon Musk and Doge to do things that Congress has never granted them the authority to do. He has issued executive orders that change federal law in ways that, again, he does not have the authority to do. Most recently, he has started targeting law firms, basically law firms and individual lawyers who have stood up to him. He has named me in several of his executive orders and in memorandum in a hope to intimidate me and others from continuing to litigate against him in court. And the reason he's doing that is because he is losing those court cases. When these cases get before federal judges, the judges are ruling against his administration. And so he wants to take out of the equation the pieces of the puzzle that are standing up to him, including the lawyers who are doing so. So the good news is that there are people fighting him. The bad news is that the Republican Party is not among them. Republicans in the House have not stood up to him. Not only are there not 3 House Republicans, there is not 1 House Republican right now willing to stand up against Donald Trump's effort to remake the government. His most recent executive order, which came out yesterday, is a power grab around elections. He claims the authority to force states around the country to adopt a series of policies that are both unconstitutional and illegal under federal and state law. And let me be clear, he does not have this power. And I keep making this distinction, Don. And it's something, like I said, it's the kind of thing that you and I used to talk about late at night. The fact that Donald Trump says he has the power to do something does not mean he has that power. We cannot aggregate it to him. We cannot just turn it over to him. So we need to recognize that the states have the right to run their elections. Congress has the right to pass laws. Donald Trump does not have the ability to change them. And we will litigate against him every step of the way. And so people need to have confidence in the Congresswoman and the job that she is doing, because she is a fighter in Congress for these things, and her Democratic colleagues. And they need to have confidence, Don, in people like you who are speaking to the American public every day about this.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, let me ask you a question, okay? Because folks are wondering, what power do they have? What repercussions will this administration really face? Any sort of justice or the law? So I know that you have Heather Rose from Miami asked, can courts really empower people other than U.S. Marshals to hold people like the president in contempt? What exactly can they enforce, if so?
Yeah. So look, it is true that when Donald Trump or the administration violate court orders, the next step is for them to be held in contempt, which means that they have willfully violated a court order. We are heading in several cases down the road of judges looking like they may hold the administration or its officials in contempt. And then the next step after that is that the judge imposes a penalty. Now, the penalty could be a fine, it could be some other consequence, it could go all the way up to putting someone in jail. And so that's what happens with the contempt process. The question that's been asked, that's being asked here, that I'm oftentimes asked is, yeah, but isn't the entity that enforces court orders the U.S. Marshal Service? And isn't the U.S. Marshal Service under the Department of Justice? And after all, Pam Bondi will never enforce a court order. So here is the deal. You mentioned that I'm the founder of Democracy Docket. Democracy Docket is a news information site about everything happening to democracy in court, so people can subscribe there for free if they go there. And one of the articles on there is by a law professor out of Rutgers, who points out that the rules actually allow federal judges to, if the Marshal Service won't enforce their orders, to use private enforcement, right? So they can hire lawyers to prosecute cases. They can hire process servers to serve. They can even hire third parties to enforce the orders. Now, that is unusual. That is outside the norms, but we are way outside the usual and outside the norms, Don. And we need to all be willing to understand that Donald Trump will not play within the lines, and we need to make sure that everyone fighting for democracy, including everybody listening here, is willing to do everything they can within the law peacefully to make clear that we are not going to stand by and let our country be taken over. And that includes asking federal judges to do the hard things around enforcing their court orders. The last thing I'll just say, Don, before I go is, everyone on here is listening to the Congresswoman and listening to you, Don, and thinking, what can they do? And the truth is, everyone has a town square. They may not be as famous as you. They may not be able to command the media like the Congresswoman, but everyone who's listening has a town square. It may be their bridge club. It may be around their dinner table. It may be their clients, their customers, their friends, their neighbors. And what I'm going to ask everyone to do is, rather than, when the difficult topics come up, rather than backing away from them, I want you to lean into them. I want you to have those conversations. I want you to tell people it is not okay what Donald Trump is trying to do to this country. It is not okay he's trying to take away senior citizens' Social Security. It's not okay that he is trying to cut Medicaid. And it is definitely not okay that he is trying to undermine free and fair elections. And I think if everyone does that, Don, and uses their town square as effectively as you do, I think we'll be okay.
Okay, Mark, I would not be a journalist if I didn't ask you. He's trying, and I don't know how much you can talk about it. He's trying to kill your law firm and others who have been fighting for justice and have gone up against this administration. Is he going to be successful in doing that? It's similar to what he's doing with the media.
Yeah, look, he's not going to be successful against me and my law firm, because I have made clear that I will never bow down. I will never back away. I will never bend a knee to this tyrant. And we will fight every single day to protect democracy.
Good.
And if that means that there are clients who think that we're not the cup of tea, like, so be it. I think there will be plenty of clients who do think that that's their cup of tea, and that's great. And I wish there were more lawyers and law firms that were showing more courage, just as, Don, I am sure you and I both agree that there should be more in the legacy media that showed that.
100%, Mark. And I thank you for that. I believe in this moment, you have to be willing to sacrifice something to stand up for what you believe in. And you are doing it in this moment. Thank you, Mr. Mark Elias. Hopefully I'll see you. Come on the program.
Big fan of your YouTube channel. Everybody should watch it.
Thank you very much. Mark, you be well. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's go on to another person, another Mark, shall we say. And that is, wait, let me make sure I'm going to the right person. No, I'm going to the wrong person. So I just want to tell everybody, we're going to get to Mark Morial a little bit later. Okay, so as a reminder to everyone, look, you don't have to wait till the end to ask questions. As we've been telling you, all you have to do is press *3 at any point, and someone is going to connect with you, and then they'll write your question down. And now I'd like to pass it off to Mr. Former Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, to talk about the critical work of the Department of Education, what it does, and how long, I guess, for now, that it's going to be able to keep doing it, and how dismantling it would harm every student, and not just every student, everyone in the country, because we're all affected by the education department and by young folks who are going to be our leaders in time. And what the administration has been trying to do to education here. So, Mr. Arne Duncan, welcome to the program. How are you? Thank you for being here.
So good to see you again, Don. Thanks for the opportunity. I want to thank the Congresswoman for convening all of us. And I don't say this easily. Mark Elias is a true American hero, and what he's doing to challenge the current administration at great personal and professional risk is truly extraordinary. And I have the utmost respect for him. And so glad he was on this. So what I'll do, Don, is I'll just sort of give a quick history lesson. I promise to be quick, because education should be the ultimate bipartisan or nonpartisan issue. It's in our nation's interest. It's in our national interest. Let me just talk about Republican presidents in our nation's history, what they have done for education. Our first Republican president, President Lincoln, during the Civil War, created land-grant universities, which was absolutely transformational. Fast forward to the last 70 years, President Eisenhower created a Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, put education on the national map. President Ford, IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Act, 7.5 million students, making sure they have a free and fair education. President Nixon, lots of challenges to President Nixon, but know what he signed into law? Pell Grants. Millions and millions of young people, many first-generation college goers, had the chance to go to college because of Pell Grants. Both Bushes pushed for greater accountability. And so this is not an R versus D issue. This is not left versus right. This is unprecedented in our nation's history. And I really want our viewers to understand that we have never seen anything like this. Dismantling the Department of Education, attacking public education, starting to attack institutions of higher education, our college and universities, is an absolutely terrifying new phenomenon that we have never seen. No one is asking for this. Parents don't want this. What are parents concerned about? They're concerned about their kids' ability to learn academically, to read well. They're concerned about their children's mental health. They're concerned about bullying in schools, and they're concerned about school shootings. And there's not a single thing, there's not one thing that Trump has done or said or signed or uttered that helps a single child in America learn to read. We have a reading crisis in America. We have far too many students that are too far behind. And we saw that with our recent NAEP scores. And we should be uniting as a country to come together to help our children learn to read, to give them a chance in life, to help them socially and emotionally, to make college more accessible for them. And Trump is challenging all of that. And Trump lies incessantly, constantly. We know that every single day. But every once in a while, he drops a kernel of truth. And I'll never forget, Don, when he said, "I love the uneducated." And I truly thought he meant that. And I know why he loves the uneducated. Those that have not had the chance to learn how to think critically, those that can't discern misinformation from real information, truth from falsehoods, they're much more likely to follow an authoritarian leader. And so it is in his personal interest to have a less educated America. It is in his political interest. It is not in our nation's interest. We have to fight together to try and continue to create more educational opportunities for all of our nation's children.
Yeah, the more uninformed the electorate or Americans are, the better chance that he has and others to stay in power. And I believe they're doing it intentionally. Secretary Duncan, I want to ask you about, this is a question from Robin, and it's just a very simple question. Robin wants to know about student loans and what's happening with that.
Yeah, so what he's talked about is sort of breaking apart the Department of Education, putting some stuff at HHS, some stuff at labor. He's talked about taking student loans to the Small Business Association, to SBA. And when I led the Department of Education, my biggest concern every night going home was the operational risk around grants and loans, literally trillions of dollars from millions of students. And what they have done is they have gutted that department, the Department of Federal Student Aid, and they're moving that over to SBA that has no knowledge or expertise on this. And the chance for a catastrophic operational failure as we go back to college in the fall is extraordinarily high. I desperately hope that doesn't happen, but that could easily happen.
Yeah. So you think that the Department of Education is gone, right? Is there any hope for it?
Well, let's be clear. He cannot eliminate the Department of Education. It was created by an act of Congress. Takes 60 people. What he is doing is he is dismantling it. He is stripping it for its parts, sending different parts to different places. What that does is that just creates a bureaucratic nightmare for states and districts, and is in no child's best interest academically.
Yeah. Thank you, Secretary Duncan. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that with us. And we're going to get more questions. Let's bring in now Mark Mariel, who I am very pleased to know and to be from my home state. A reminder again about the questions, you can just press *3 and you can get them in. I would like to pass it over now to the president of the National Urban League, Mr. Mark Mariel, to talk about how these issues will affect your pocketbook and how the administration is attacking diversity and what you can expect from many of the administration's executive orders. Hi, Mark. How are you? Are you there? I think Mark is frozen. Mark. So, are you back? If not, we will move on to the next person and we'll bring Mark back in. I think he probably has a connectivity issue. So, stand by for Mark Morial. I hope that Chiquita Brooks is ready. Mark, are you there yet? No. Okay. Is that Mark? I guess not. All right. We'll bring him in. Let's let him get their stuff straight behind the scene. I want to turn now the microphone over to Chiquita Brooks Assured, the former administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to talk about how Republicans are impacting your health care. So thank you, Chiquita, for joining us and laying out the threats of America's health care. So what is going on? What is, where you're going to lay out the threats to America's health care right now, but that is a huge topic. I mean, we could stay here all night and discuss as we can talk about the Department of Education. But look, getting rid of Medicare and Medicaid, and folks are already concerned about the lack of health care, the lack of access to good health care in this country. So where are you on this, and what are your concerns?
Well, I'll just start by saying, when you think about where we were just a couple of months ago in the Biden-Harris administration, and thanks to Congresswoman Wilson and so many of her colleagues, we had, for the first time, Medicare negotiating drug costs. Last year, we were able to save Medicare tons of money. This year, Medicare beneficiaries have a $2,000 cap. We have expanded Medicaid coverage. We now have over 100 million people who are covered by Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act tax credits, thanks to the work that has been done. And what are the first couple of things that this new administration is talking about doing? Cutting healthcare programs by $880 billion because they want to pay for a tax cut. And just to say what that would mean to people, it would be so devastating. And, there's been some discussion where some of the Republicans have said they don't mean to cut Medicare, they don't mean to cut Medicaid. You cannot come up with $880 billion without looking to a program that we spend a lot of money on, and that is what we spend a lot on healthcare. And the thing that I think really people need to understand is, in this country, Medicaid in particular supports so many people. It supports so many children who have high needs. It supports so many middle-class families who can't afford long-term care, can't afford the care that they need for their elderly parents or for relatives. Medicaid is often the one providing that coverage in this country. And so talking about taking $880 billion, it's going to hurt families, it's going to hurt the economy, it's going to hurt workers, it's going to hurt hospitals.
Thank you. And then we'll get more questions from the folks in the group. And I am really concerned, because, I'm not getting any younger, about healthcare.
None of us are.
And we were on a good road, and then all of a sudden we had hit a detour. We hit a fork in the road and some potholes. And so let's see if we can repair it and get back on track. Okay, do we have Mark Morial? Mark, are you back? Mark still having connectivity issues? Let me know in the chat when we can get Mark back, or someone jump in and let me know, okay? Okay, so I want to bring in now, I'd like to introduce you to Sui Chung, the Executive Director of Americans for Immigrant Justice, who will now describe some of the White House executive orders around immigration and the rights of any immigrants, especially those targeted by this order. This is extremely important right now. So thank you for joining us so much for describing the rights of immigrants and everything happening in the immigration space. I want to know. I know that you're concerned about it, but what rights do immigrants have it, whether it's documented or undocumented or migrants? I get that question from a lot of folks who are saying, well, they don't have any rights under the Constitution, and others say they do have rights under the Constitution. They don't have rights to due process, et cetera, and so on. And by the way, I do have to say, I am extremely concerned about how inhumane what the administration appears to be doing is, especially with all of these videos and whatever. It's just, to me, mind-boggling. It appears like the cruelty is the point of all of this.
Thank you, Don. I really appreciate being here. Thank you, Congresswoman Wilson, for inviting me back to participate in a town hall. I think that we as a country have to remember who we are as a nation of immigrants. Obviously, there are individuals who came by force or were here originally, but overall, we are a nation of immigrants, and remembering that story and remembering that we should be celebrating one another for building the country that we do have. As far as rights are concerned, we do have constitutional protections for immigrants in place, and the way that immigrants are being portrayed in the media right now as criminals, rapists, drug traffickers. The statistics show over and over again that immigrants have a lower rate of any type of criminal activity in comparison to US born citizens. So what we're seeing in the media is a very inaccurate portrayal. I think all of us in all of our communities, we can cite to our friends, to colleagues who are upstanding, wonderful contributors to this country, contributing to our economy, building businesses, employing people, and really sustaining our communities as upstanding participants. So, where our communities can stand together is remembering our own histories as well as knowing who our community members are and not staying silent on that. So, remembering in terms of what rights immigrants have, they do have the right to remain silent. They can refuse to answer questions. They can ask to speak to a lawyer. They are free to go, and unless there's a warrant that's being produced, they need to understand that they have to know what the basis for any stops are, and ask an officer or an agent during an enforcement action what their name is, their badge, their ID, ask for a warrant. They can refuse to consent to a search and refuse to sign any document. They have to know their rights in the country. Somebody's banging on your door, you're at home, a warrant has to be produced. It isn't, immigrants are people. We have to remember our commitment to human rights as a nation. The United States should be a leader for advocating for human rights and upholding human rights. And the portrayal of immigrants right now being chased down, hunted down is extraordinarily disturbing. I don't think that there is anyone in our community that could speak otherwise. There are a couple other items. Don, you said I will talk about some items. There's something new on the immigration landscape. So thank you for using the word some. There's really a lot going on. I do want to just preface this with that in the state of Florida, Americans for Immigrant Justice with other nonprofits, community partners, have built a coalition called RAISE, RAISE. You can find us online, raise.is. We do have a hotline. If there's a raid occurring, your colleague, friend, family member is being subjected to a raid and they need legal assistance and some orientation, you can call our hotline number 1-888-600-5762. On our website, raise.is, you will find a lot of resources, know your rights, information about encounters with ICE at work, at home, if you're pulled over, resources on medical care, and other items, family preparedness. I invite everybody to please come to this website. It's a group of partners throughout the state of Florida, putting these resources together and really there to support the immigrant community. A couple items that I want to mention is that there is a new registration requirement for immigrants that have not been encountered before by immigration. This is something new and really, forcing people to come forward and expose themselves, though they could be in process for a legal method for relief. So there are avenues for relief in the United States and seeking different applications. This registration requirement re- makes people come forward before they've finished that processing. So that is something new. Also, this concept of prosecutorial discretion, the undoing of what was a logical and orderly method by the Biden administration in terms of assessing individuals on a case-by-case basis. So an individual who may have been here, no crimes, 20 years, may have be married to a U.S. citizen, in process of fixing their current situation. They may have multiple U.S. citizen children, businesses, 5 grandchildren, and an assessment on a case-by-case basis, and instead the analysis being on who are the highest threats, criminals, national security threats, alleged terrorists. Those individuals would be prioritized as opposed to expending limited resources on populations that are contributing to our communities and are in process of legalizing their status. So the concept of prosecutorial discretion has really been undone by the current administration. And if you are encountered by ICE, even if you don't have crimes, you will be an enforcement priority because you cannot show and demonstrate that you have a current status at this time. So I tell people, have you driven over 55 in a 55 zone? Have you rolled through a stop sign before? These are all elements of prosecutorial discretion. If an officer has decided not to ticket you or, not to impose any sanctions on you, similarly, this is an orderly method to use our resources effectively. Importantly, the directive on sensitive locations, protections at schools, hospitals, and religious locations, that was undone. So ICE can come forward with that. There is a current injunction court order related to places of worship, fortunately, but ICE can be going into schools right now and arresting parents, arresting teachers, asking questions. So, these are protections that have been longstanding and more secure under the Biden administration. And it's a frightening time that our children have to be exposed to enforcement activities. Protections related to victims of crime, domestic violence, trafficking, those have all been undone. Humanitarian protections have been widely undone. And earlier, the mentioning of the attack on lawyers, also on immigration lawyers, we have a ethical duty, to fulfill our obligations under U.S. immigration law and our international laws for protection of persecuted and tortured people. We have to just keep pushing ahead. Lastly, I want to state 2 items, which is on Friday, the Trump administration did undo funding for unaccompanied minors. So children who have been abused, neglected, abandoned, persecuted, and tortured that are here. This affects 26,000 or so children. The funding has been cut off. So that representation and our commitment to assist the most vulnerable immigrants, unaccompanied minors, we've lost that commitment right now. Right now, individuals are suffering tremendously in detention. Detention centers there's overcrowding. We saw individuals being sent to 3rd countries, to Guantanamo, to El Salvador. This is unprecedented, where individuals are being grabbed and taken to a 3rd country. So all of this is very disturbing, and I really hope all of you as community members will support our immigrant communities, which is your story and our collective story.
That is amazing that what they've undone with just in the course of less than 100 days. It's really Unbelievable. Thank you for that. And if you have any questions, you can press *3 and then we'll get them if you have it for anybody who's on the panel. Okay. So let's see. We're waiting on Mark. We didn't get Mark, so we're going to go to Nancy. Nancy Altman. I'd like to pass it over to Nancy Altman, the president of Social Security, works and chair of the Strengthened Social Security Coalition, who will speak on the current state of Social Security and recent threats impacting Social Security beneficiaries. We're all listening, and we want to hear from you. Nancy, how are you?
Well, unfortunately, I think I'm better than our country right now. I mean, the Social Security is celebrating its 90th year. It was enacted 90 years ago. It's been through wars, it's been through pandemics, it's been through recessions. It's always been strong. I've been working on this program for 50 of those 90 years, and I've never been so concerned. I've always been optimistic about it, but I don't know that it will survive the Musk-Trump presidency, and we must, all of us, do everything we can to make our voices heard on all of these issues we've been talking about tonight, including Social Security. So right after Trump was inaugurated, the Elon Musk's Doge, minions have been ransacking Social Security. They've all been all through the Social Security Administration. They have our most personal data. They, including all our Social Security numbers, our earnings records for those who've applied for disability insurance, all our health records. I mean, it's just an enormous amount of information. They have no legitimate reason for that information. No one in the history of the program has had the kind of unfettered, open access to all of that information. There was a lawsuit and a temporary restraining order was brought, but the Trump administration reaction to that was to say, okay, well, then we're going to shut down Social Security rather than comply with this order. The Doge can't have our data. Now, they backed off of that for now. But there are all these, they've really been hollowing out the agency. So it is not an exaggeration to say that in the last few weeks, Social Security Administration has lost nearly 1,000 years of institutional knowledge. People who worked there for 30, 35, 40 years, very mission driven, but were forced out. And what it's going to do, I think, and the agency is really close to collapsing. It's a toxic workplace. It is every day they change something and everybody has to scramble to figure out what to do. The employees are told the same time their supervisors are told when their employers are told. So the employees go to their supervisors, the supervisors go, I don't know. And it's just a chaos, confusion. They're talking about terminating our, Social Security is part of our community. There are field offices in every community. There should be more of them, but there are 1,200 nationwide. Musk instructed the General Services Administration to cancel leases of all the properties. At the same time, they've told employees they have to report back to the office, even though there's not enough office space. So what do you do if the office is closed? They've just been creating chaos. And my fear is that in 2005, President George W. Bush sought to privatize Social Security. The American people said no, even though it was a Republican-controlled Congress, he couldn't even get a vote in Congress. And I worry that the Republicans and Donald Trump and Elon Musk learned the wrong lesson. What they learned was, oh, well, that was too transparent. He put his idea out in public for everyone to see and debate. And so now they're going under darkness, and they are, as I say, just creating enormous chaos with the idea that that if they make the administration of the program collapse so people cannot access their benefits, they'll say, see, government doesn't work. We'll have to go to the private sector. There's $1.6 trillion that flows in and out of Social Security every year. You know how much Wall Street gets of that? Zero. and they want their hands on it. They want to give tax cuts to billionaires and cut our earned benefits. And again, they're as polarized as the nation is over so many issues, and even some of the issues we were talking about over the last hour. The nation is not polarized over Social Security. MAGA voters agree with progressive Democrats that we don't want to see Social Security cut. In fact, its benefits should be expanded. Donald Trump said he wouldn't touch the program, but of course, Elon Musk recently called it a criminal Ponzi scheme. There was somebody else who said that. Donald Trump called it that before he ran for office. They have total disdain for our Social Security system. And I think the way that they're talking about cutting it without saying they're cutting it is to claim there's all kinds of fraud when there's vanishingly small amounts of fraud. It's extremely efficiently run, much more efficiently than the private sector counterpart programs. But the Secretary of Commerce recently said that he's worth something like $2 to $4 billion. Well, if my mother-in-law didn't get her benefits, she wouldn't complain. Yeah, because she has a son-in-law who could lend her, $100 million. That's not true of virtually all of the 73 million people who receive Social Security. So again, I don't want to scare people. I know this is a matter of being able to stay in your homes, put food on your tables, and so forth. But I do think everyone's got to be alert and make their voices heard and tell their members of Congress and representatives to do their jobs, haul in Elon Musk, and have a public hearing and demand to know what is going on.
Let me ask you this, Nancy, since we have you here, and just a couple of folks, they want to know. Nancy, let's see, Bruce from Miami asked, will I be able to receive my Social Security benefits as it stands in 2 years?
Before January 20th, I would have said 100%, absolutely, I guarantee it. It's never missed a payment in those 90 years. The problem is now that they've gutted the agency. And although there's a certain amount of automaticness to those payment of benefits, if you're already getting them, it is a legacy system. They have to be maintained. In just the last week or so, the system has crashed several times. And that's what the real danger is. I don't like it that they're talking, the Commerce Secretary is saying, well, maybe there'll be a disruption of benefits. That would be catastrophic. But I think the way to assure that you will get your benefits is to, again, make your voice known and heard.
I'll ask one more, and then we'll move on and we'll talk about education and other things. Let's see, Nancy. Marisuk from North Miami Beach asks, so many concerns, but my current one is my parents' Social Security benefits. I'm not sure what to believe anymore. I'm not sure what to believe anymore in the news, so I need some clarity on upcoming Social Security verification. What does this process look like?
Oh, this is the identification verification, I think. This is, again, there are so many changes. With all due respect to you, Don, I am sometimes quite critical of the mainstream media, but on this issue recently, they've been very accurate. And I think you can really, although they've been sending out the alarm, but I think appropriately so. And I think people can rely on what they're reading in the paper as accurate. And I think what the question is that you always, since the beginning, the idea is that the American people have their choice of how they want to interact with the Social Security Administration to access their earned benefits. So there's been, I think the first field office was open in 1937. There were field offices all over the country where you can go to talk to people, experts face to face. There's also a phone system where you can call an 800 number. And more recently, those who are able to use the computer and have access to broadband and so forth can do some of what needs to be done online. Well, just recently, the Trump administration said, well, we don't think you should be able to claim your benefits online and prove your, prove your identity online, even though it's been done since the beginning very, very accurately, again, with vanishingly small amounts of fraud, more fraud on the internet than you see in field offices, which is where you have to meet someone face to face or over the telephone. The field offices are already overworked and understaffed. But this change by the administration will require millions, literally millions more Americans to go to their field offices, wait in line, spend hours. Some field offices are an hour, 2 hours away in rural areas to have to identify yourself to the satisfaction of the Social Security Administration. Just before this town hall meeting started, a new press release came out. It seems to always come out from the Social Security Administration. In fact, from the Trump seems to like to bring them out at 5 p.m. at night. And there was just one that said this change in the phones was supposed to take place March 31st. It's been moved to April 14th, and it's changing again. So basically, it's for people who are applying for new benefits or are changing their banks. If you're currently getting payments, that should continue. You should check your statements, make sure that you're getting the payments you've earned. I never would have said that before this administration, but check on it and make sure it's fine. But don't worry, if you're getting it, it should keep coming without you having to verify your identity.
I want to go on now to, let's see, Chiquita Brooks LaSure, and talk about. I want to bring in the Congresswoman. I want to bring in Chiquita. I want to bring in Nancy. All of them, okay? And because Sherrod from Miami Gardens, whoever can answer this, and maybe all of you, is asking, what are you doing to help your constituents from what Donald Trump is trying to do with all these cuts, especially to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the continuous resolution that the House just passed? What are the Democrats doing to fight back?
Well, as far as members, our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, has created the Rapid Response Task Force and Litigation Working Group. And all of us have been assigned to different portions of those committees to actively engage in the multifaceted struggle to protect, defend everyday Americans from the harm being inflicted by this administration. It's hard. It's not easy. And I want to say that I'm a proud co-sponsor of the newly introduced Taxpayer Data Protection Act, which is legislation that will directly stop people like Elon Musk from accessing highly sensitive Treasury Department payment systems. And additionally, I have supported the bill H.R. 2045 to amend Title 18 of the Social Security Act to provide for coverage of dental, vision, and hearing care under the Medicare program. It's hard, but we are not going to give up. We're going to do all that we can, and we're going to fight to make Republicans join us in this fight, because the people who are suffering are not just Democrats. These are our constituents across America. And the poorest districts in this country are represented by Republicans. So we are calling out to the people in the nation, the people who we represent, and asking them to reach out to their Republican members of Congress, the House and the Senate, and complain. Don't complain to the Democrats. We're doing everything that we can, and we have a strong, united party, and it's being led by a strong role model gentleman, Hakeem Jeffries, who we are so proud of, and Leader Schumer in the Senate. And we're trying to pull together to fight this because we lost, and we lost big time. So we're going to need the American people to help us in this battle. This is not a battle that we can win alone. We're going to need you out there listening, and we're going to need the press helping us shine the spotlight on all of these dangerous actions that are taking place in this nation. We need you to work alongside of us.
Congresswoman, can I ask you something? Because you mentioned something at the beginning that I responded to, and I said, you said you needed 3 Republicans. What gives you, I guess, the hope or of a possibility of 3 Republicans coming over? Because it doesn't appear that Republicans they want to work with Democrats at all. And that they really don't care about the Democrats in the Congress or in the Senate, and they're just basically doing whatever they want because Donald Trump is a Trojan horse for them to ram their agenda through, which they are being successful at.
Well, I think now we might need 4 because we did lose a member most recently.
Mm.
And so that makes it even harder. But I'm hoping, this is just Frederica Wilson, that I'm hoping that Republicans who represent districts that are the most challenged, they might not feel it now, but they will feel it as we move along in this administration, that they will understand that they were sent to Congress to represent their constituents, not to follow behind Elon Musk or succeed all of their power to a man who is not elected. So we're new in the process. It's like you said, we're not even to 100 days yet. So I'm hoping that the consciousness of these individuals, people who we don't even know who they are, I cannot even predict, will wake up and say, at this time in our history, I must speak up. I must speak up for the people that I represent, or we're going to lose our country.
And if I can,
that's what we're thinking about. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Nancy.
If I can reinforce, first of all, Representative Wilson, thank you for referring to Representative Grijalva. He was a huge loss. He was wonderful member, the one who passed away recently. But it's important for everyone to remember Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those are Democratic programs. And the Democrats have always been extremely strong in fighting for those programs. The Hakeem Jeffries and I think Representative Wilson also are at 90% of the Democrats in the House are co-sponsors of legislation that actually expands Social Security and paid for by requiring the wealthiest to pay their fair share. And I've been told that if Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker Jeffries, that will come up for a vote, and the Republicans will have a hard time voting against it because it's what their constituents want. I think they've got the reconciliation bill working its way through Congress, where they're trying to come up with a resolution. They can do that just with Republican votes. but they have signaled they're going to have very deep Medicaid cuts. And if that, I think they will lose some of those members, or those members will be voted out of office. These are very popular programs that the Democrats have championed. They're doing what they can now. They're writing letters, they're making speeches, they're having rallies in front of field offices that are scheduled to be closed, and they are alerting the American people to fight.
And if I could also add, agree with everything that the Congresswoman said in terms of talking to both sides of the aisle. The other part that I would add is it's also state leaders. So what we've seen in this fight before, when Republicans tried to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act and cut the Medicaid program during the first Trump administration, there was a little bit of an understanding of how important Medicaid is, again, not just for people, but for the entire state, for your hospitals. Florida, specifically, is extremely dependent on the Medicaid program. And we have seen that some of the Republican governors across the country have signaled to the Senate and to Congress about them being really concerned about cutting the Medicaid program. There is no way to come up with those level of cuts, as I said, without really going after healthcare, but really making sure that all elected officials really hear voices. Again, just the devastation across this country, if they try to cut the Medicaid program, is immense. And there are a lot of people to partner with when you think about all of the impacts. Would affect education, affect so many of our programs.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to add anything to that before I ask the next question? Okay, let me ask, and I feel like we've lost Mark. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here we go. This one is for, excuse me, Chiquita, and Nabila is asking from Miami. Given the privatization of Medicare and Medicaid appears to be inevitable, it is a logistical. Is it logical, excuse me, to assume that the large insurance companies are best positioned to manage these funds? History has shown that insurance providers often prioritize profit over people. What is being done to ensure that services are provided equitably and not denied?
Such an important question. During the Biden-Harris administration, we put at CMS many more requirements to, speaking specifically about the Medicare program, really making sure that health plans were held to higher standards. We put in new rules around prior authorization for all insurance, whether it's commercial or Medicare and Medicaid, to say that you need to be using prior authorization properly. This is a big issue for us, and one that we need to continue working on moving forward. We'll see what the Trump administration does with the rules that we set forth. I hope that Congress continues to look at this, because an administration only has a certain amount of authority unless Congress gives more restrictions, more requirements for insurance companies to provide care to people.
Okay, let's see. This one is for Ms. Chung. Sheila from Miami Gardens asked, as a U.S. citizen, do I need to travel with documents to show proof of who I am? I asked because of the random stop by police and ICE officers.
So I think this is an important question for everyone to realize: what kind of community do we want to live in? What environment do we want to live in where there is racial profiling, or there is an accusation, of are you an immigrant? Are you not an immigrant? And again, going back to, that sort of foundation that we should all be proud of an immigrant history, whether you're US born or not. But where we're being pushed into a corner right now is to be able to distinguish and be able to say, this person is an immigrant, looks like an immigrant, is perceived as an immigrant. We don't want to live in that type of society where people have to defend who they are and what their background is. And having to travel domestically, and there are many people in this country that don't have US passports, and they're US citizens, and having to travel domestically because you are being looked at and being perceived as being an other or an immigrant. We need to de-escalate that and realize that there will be an element of racial profiling if we continue on this pathway. So just to answer your question, to travel domestically, when has that been a requirement that we have to travel with a US passport? Um,
Yeah.
I think that individuals who want to, in their own way, um, facilitate their travel and the ease of travel, perhaps they would make those decisions. But myself, as a U.S. citizen, I think it's really important for us to continue forward where we're not playing into or contributing to a universe where it is us versus them, and contributing to factors that require us to carry papers that are unnecessary to be free to travel freely in our own country.
Yeah, I think I have one more for you. Let me see. How will these policies affect schools with a lot of immigrant students? Because you talked about that they're able to go into schools now with a lot of immigrant students. And what can parents and communities do to make sure their kids don't lose access to resources and opportunities?
So it's important for school districts to know, as with any place, that there are private and there are public spaces. So ICE or law enforcement, they're not permitted to be in every single location within a school district. So, for example, myself going into a school or elementary school, I don't have access to every area. Every area of a school is not open to the public. And so the recommendation really is that individuals within the school district, individuals who are working in school districts, that there are policies in place and that there is a distinction between what is private and what is public areas. ICE does not have complete ability to just, come into a place where children are getting educated in order to conduct an enforcement action. And so those protocols have to be in place in order to distinguish this is a private location. Do you have a warrant? Do you have the ability to come forward with whatever enforcement action is occurring? As far as the question is in terms of access to resources, we have heard that there are many children or families that are, suffering right now and are fearful to send their children to school. Some of those enforcement actions don't necessarily have to be done on school property. They could be in and around. And that's leaves people very vulnerable. Mixed status families where there are US citizen children who have parents who might not have finished their process or do not have status at the moment. And those children could be very vulnerable to having to not have continued care. Somebody doesn't come and pick them up from school. So remembering that we're not just thinking about individuals that don't officially have immigration status, we're talking about children who are US citizens in mixed status families that are extremely vulnerable at the moment. And this is a different type of family separation. It is still family separation, as we may have defined at the border, where children were forcibly separated from their parents. Similarly, this is a version of that. Family separations will continue to occur with the current stance on enforcement action.
Nancy, do you agree with claims that Social Security will collapse in 60 to 90 days due to Doge?
Well, as I said, before January 20th or before November, before the election, I never would have said that because it is such a well-run organization. I've now talked to people who really deal with IT. The top people who work on cybersecurity have been forced out of the agency. So there is real concern about identity theft and all kinds of scams. Seniors are generally susceptible to that. And the people, and there's a legacy system that uses a very old programming language that isn't even taught anymore called COBOL, and the systems are built on that. And there have been the experts who are getting older who are expert in that. They've all been, a lot of them have been forced out or just couldn't take it and retired. And as I said, the system has been breaking down more. So some have predicted. The former Commissioner of Social Security, who was confirmed under President Biden, was the one who predicted that he was going to collapse could collapse within 30 to 90 days. When he said it, thought, oh no, that's hyperbolic. We shouldn't be saying that. But the more people I talk to, the more it is reality. And when you have the Trump administration saying, oh, well, if you miss a payment, if you complain, you're a fraudster, makes you wonder if they're concerned about it collapsing as well. So the bottom line is, I'd like to be reassuring about that, but I don't think anybody can give you assurance.
Congresswoman, take us behind the scenes of what's going on in Washington. You said you're hopeful that, I guess more reasonable minds will come around. But what is it like being a Democrat in Washington, D.C. when when they've got every branch of government, legislative, judicial, executives, and they are ignoring court orders and federal judges and not restoring funds when being ordered? I know that you say that you're hopeful. I don't know if the American people are hopeful. I think we just feel like, man, we have no recourse and we want to continue to fight, but where are our folks, our anti Trump folks, and not just Democrats? Where are the folks who believe in democracy right now?
Well, I don't want people to give up. I don't want you to surrender. What I need for you to do is to call and ask for your Republican member of Congress. Write this number down. Call 202-224-3121. Call and speak to their staff, whoever answers the phone, and voice your complaint. Voice how afraid you are and how concerned you are and how you feel pain and how you want grocery prices to go down. And you don't want them worried about trying to take your Social Security and giving raises and tax breaks to billionaires. How you want to be able to afford rent. How you want to be able to afford groceries. That's what you say. And tell them that you are watching and you are a voter. And then I want you to call this number. Call 202-456-1111. That's the White House. And say the
Wait,
same
repeat that.
thing. 202-456-1111. And let them know exactly how pissed you are. Speak up. Make sure by the thousands and let everyone you know pass these numbers along to everyone you work with, everyone you worship with, everyone in your neighborhood or your family or your friends. If you're a student, your college students, pick up the phone, call. We're not going to give up. We're going to fight. This is our country. This is our nation. And I want to say to all of the media on the phone, please continue to shine a light on what is happening. We cannot lose hope. got to keep pushing. We've been in some situations like this. I've been through several presidents, and we have been in some precarious situations in states, etc. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we've got to fight, and we've got to have faith and just keep pushing. That's all I can tell you. And call, keep the pressure on, keep calling. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your family, get it out. Just that's what we got to do. Our voice, let's say our voice is our unity. So the Democrats are unified. We have a great leader, Hakeem Jeffries. We have a great leader in the Senate, and we're going to stick together and we're going to fight through this. And remember, an election comes up in 2 years, not 4. So we have the power to change the House, to change the Senate. We have that power. We cannot relinquish our power to the Republicans and to Elon Musk.
Well, Congresswoman, thank you. I think is this where we've come to an end? Yes? I just want to make sure that I'm not going forward and getting off topic. Is that right, Congresswoman?
I
Yes,
think
all
so.
right. All right. So with that said, the Congresswoman has spoken. I can't say the fat lady and son because there's nothing fat about her, but except for those rosy cheeks that I love. I love those cheeks. So thank you, Congresswoman. I appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who tuned in. Thank you for all of the folks who are here who joined us this evening. I'm sorry we didn't get to hear from Mark Mariel. I had a technical difficulty with him. So thanks everyone who tuned in and listened and asked questions during this event. We tried to take as many questions as possible. We received a lot of questions during the event. So if you're not able to address your question, please feel free to call Congresswoman Wilson's office. She gave out phone numbers. I'm going to give out a phone number. 305-690-5905, 305-690-5905, or stay on the line if you'd like to subscribe, but you haven't talked to a team member yet, and you'll be able to leave a message with your email momentarily. And with that, I am going to say goodbye for the Congresswoman unless she has some final words, but I believe that is the end because I said the Congresswoman has spoken, and her last words were, fight back, do not give up. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm Don Lemon. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you tune in to the Don Lemon Show on YouTube, like and subscribe, and keep us independent journalists out here streaming and fighting for you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
The Access Live event